What happens when you're sitting on the judge's bench and suddenly recognize your childhood friend in the defendant's chair? Wait. Tommy Benedetto? Judge Frank Caprio's voice cracked as he leaned forward, his gavel frozen midair. The entire courtroom fell silent. The man in the defendant's chair looked up with tears in his eyes and whispered, "Frankie, it's been 40 years." What happened next would become the most emotional moment in courtroom television history. It was supposed to be just another Tuesday morning in Providence Municipal Court. Judge Frank Caprio had already handled 3 parking violations and was moving through his docket with his usual blend of compassion and justice. The next case seemed routine: Thomas Benedetto, charged with driving without a license and failure to appear. But when the bailiff called the name and a thin, weathered man in his 70s shuffled to the defendant's chair, something clicked in Judge Caprio's memory. The walk. The way he held his shoulders. Even after 4 decades, some things never change. But Judge Caprio wasn't prepared for what he was about to discover about his old friend's life. "State your name for the record," the clerk requested routinely. "Thomas Benedetto," the man replied quietly, his voice barely audible. Judge Caprio froze. He knew that voice. He knew that face, even aged and weathered by time. This wasn't just any defendant. This was Tommy, the kid who used to ride bikes with him through the streets of Federal Hill. Tommy, who shared his lunch money when Frank forgot his. Tommy, who dreamed of becoming a professional baseball player. "Excuse me," Judge Caprio said, raising his hand to pause the proceedings. "Sir, could you look up at me for a moment?" Tommy raised his head, and their eyes met across 4 decades of separation. The recognition was instant and mutual. "My God," Judge Caprio whispered. "Tommy Benedetto. From Atwells Avenue." The courtroom erupted in whispers. Court reporters stopped typing. Even the bailiffs turned to look. In 30 years on the bench, Judge Caprio had never stopped proceedings for a personal recognition. Tommy's eyes filled with tears. "Frankie. Judge Caprio. I never thought." "Stand up, Tommy. Please, stand up," Judge Caprio said, his voice thick with emotion. Tommy stood slowly, his hands shaking. Here was the boy who used to be the fastest runner in their neighborhood, now frail and clearly struggling with life's hardships. But what Judge Caprio learned next about Tommy's situation would test everything he believed about justice and compassion. "Tommy, before we proceed with this case, I need to ask you something. What happened to you? What happened to the Tommy I knew who was going to play for the Red Sox?" Tommy looked down, ashamed. "Life happened, Frankie. Life happened. Look at me, Tommy. You're in my courtroom now, but you're still my friend. Talk to me." Subscribe now and comment what you think Judge Caprio should do, because what Tommy reveals next will break your heart. Tommy took a deep breath and began to speak, his voice gaining strength as he saw the compassion in his old friend's eyes. "After high school, I got drafted. Vietnam. Came back, different. Had trouble keeping jobs. Started drinking. Got married, had kids, but I couldn't. I couldn't be the father they needed. Wife left, took the kids to California. Haven't seen them in 15 years. The courtroom was dead silent. Judge Caprio leaned forward, listening to every word. "I've been living in my car for the past 6 months, Frankie. That's why I was driving without a license. It expired, and I don't have a permanent address to renew it. I missed the court date because I was in the hospital. Had a heart attack." Judge Caprio's eyes were now visibly moist. "Tommy, why didn't you reach out? Why didn't you call me? How could I? You became this important judge, on TV, helping people. And me? I became this." Tommy gestured to his worn clothes, his tired appearance. But Judge Caprio's response would show Tommy, and everyone watching, what true friendship really means. Judge Caprio stood up from his bench, something unprecedented in his courtroom. He walked down to where Tommy was standing and did something that violated every protocol in judicial procedure. He hugged his childhood friend. "Tommy, you listen to me. You are not this. You are my friend. You are a Vietnam veteran who served his country. You are a man who's had some hard breaks, but you're still standing here." The entire courtroom was in tears. Court officers were wiping their eyes. The stenographer had stopped recording, too emotional to continue. What Judge Caprio did next would set a precedent that would be studied in law schools for decades. "Tommy, here's what we're going to do. First, these charges are dismissed. All of them." The prosecutor started to object, but Judge Caprio held up his hand. "Second, my office is going to help you get your license renewed. We'll use the court's address as your mailing address until we get you situated." Tommy was openly weeping now. "Frankie, I can't accept charity. This isn't charity, Tommy. This is what friends do. This is what community does." But the biggest surprise was still coming. Judge Caprio turned to address the packed courtroom. "Ladies and gentlemen, this man taught me my first lesson about sharing when we were 8 years old. He gave me half his sandwich when I forgot my lunch. Today, 43 years later, I'm returning the favor." He turned back to Tommy. "You're not living in your car anymore, Tommy. You're coming home with me tonight. Maria's already cooking for an army anyway, and she's been asking me for years when I was going to bring you around again." The courtroom erupted in applause. Even the court officers were clapping. Tommy could barely speak through his tears. "I don't deserve this, Frankie. I've made so many mistakes. We all have, Tommy. The difference is, some of us had better luck, better support systems, better breaks. You served your country, you tried your best with the cards you were dealt. That's not failure, that's courage." Judge Caprio addressed the court reporter. "Let the record show that Thomas Benedetto is a friend of this court and a friend of mine. Let it also show that sometimes, justice isn't just about following the law. It's about recognizing the humanity in everyone who comes before us." But what happened next would prove that this moment changed more than just Tommy's life. Over the following weeks, the video of Judge Caprio's reunion with Tommy went viral. It was shared millions of times across social media platforms. News outlets from around the world covered the story. But more importantly, it sparked something beautiful. Veterans organizations reached out to Tommy, offering support and resources. A local construction company offered him a job. Most surprisingly, Tommy's daughter in California saw the video and called him for the first time in 15 years. "Dad," she said through tears over the phone, "I saw what happened in court. I've been looking for you for years." The ripple effects continued to spread throughout the community. Judge Caprio's act of compassion inspired others in Providence to look for ways to help veterans and homeless individuals. A new program was established at the municipal court to connect defendants facing similar situations with social services. Tommy, now clean, sober, and employed, became a volunteer at the local VA hospital, sharing his story with other veterans struggling with similar issues. 6 months later, Tommy's daughter flew in from California with his 2 grandchildren he had never met. Judge Caprio officiated at the family reunion in his courtroom, the same place where their lives had reconnected. Share this video if you believe in the power of friendship and second chances, because Judge Caprio's example shows us how one act of recognition can transform lives. Tommy addressed Judge Caprio at that reunion, surrounded by family he thought he'd lost forever. "Frankie, you didn't just dismiss my charges that day. You reminded me that I was still worth something. That I still mattered to someone." Judge Caprio responded in his typical humble manner, "Tommy, you always mattered. Sometimes we just need someone to remind us who we really are underneath all the pain and mistakes." The lesson became clear to everyone who witnessed this extraordinary moment. In a world that often seems divided by politics, economics, and social status, Judge Caprio demonstrated that human connection transcends all boundaries. He showed that true leadership isn't about power or position, it's about recognizing the dignity in every person who comes before you. Years later, when asked about that day in interviews, Judge Caprio would always say, "I wasn't acting as a judge that day. I was acting as a friend." And sometimes, being a friend is the most important job any of us can have. Tommy's transformation became legendary in Providence. He not only rebuilt his relationship with his children and met his grandchildren, but he also became a powerful advocate for veterans' rights and homeless services. His story became a beacon of hope for others facing similar struggles. Speaking at veterans events, Tommy would often say, "I learned that day that it's never too late for redemption. It's never too late to come home." And sometimes, home is found in the most unexpected places, even a courtroom. The impact on Judge Caprio's approach to justice was equally profound. While he had always been known for his compassion, the encounter with Tommy reinforced his belief that every person who appears before a judge has a story, a history, and a fundamental human dignity that must be acknowledged. He began implementing more programs to help defendants address underlying issues rather than simply punishing violations. His court became a model for restorative justice, studied by legal professionals worldwide. What made this moment so special wasn't just the reunion itself. It was the reminder that behind every case number, every violation, every defendant, there's a human being with dreams, struggles, and the capacity for redemption. Judge Caprio didn't just see Thomas Benedetto, defendant. He saw Tommy, his childhood friend who needed help. That recognition, that moment of seeing the person behind the charges, transformed two lives and inspired a community. It showed that justice, at its best, is not just about punishment, it's about healing, hope, and the possibility that we can all find our way back home. The video of that day continues to circulate, touching hearts and reminding viewers that compassion and justice are not opposing forces, they are complementary expressions of our highest human values. But the deeper story of how this reunion happened reveals something extraordinary about Providence's tight-knit community. 3 years after that emotional courtroom moment, Tommy Benedetto had become something of a local legend. His transformation from homeless veteran to community advocate was documented by local news stations and became required viewing at social work programs throughout New England. During a Veterans Appreciation Dinner in 2019, Tommy shared more details about his journey that hadn't been public before. "When I was living in my car," Tommy told the audience of veterans and their families, "I had actually driven by the courthouse 3 times before my hearing. I was terrified. I thought Judge Caprio would see me as just another failure, just another guy who couldn't get his life together." He paused, his voice breaking slightly. "I had no idea that the scared little boy I used to share my lunch with had become a man who would save my life." The revelation sent ripples through the veterans community. Tommy's story had inspired the creation of the Federal Hill Fellowship, a program that paired successful community members with struggling veterans. Judge Caprio served as honorary chairman, but the day-to-day operations were run by Tommy himself. Within 2 years, the program had helped over 200 veterans find housing, employment, and reconnect with their families. The model was being studied and replicated in cities across the nation. In 2020, when the COVID-19 pandemic hit Providence, Tommy's transformation became even more crucial. As courthouses closed and many veterans lost jobs, Tommy worked tirelessly to ensure that no veteran in Providence faced homelessness alone. He converted his own small apartment into a coordination center, making hundreds of calls daily to connect veterans with resources. Judge Caprio, working remotely during the pandemic, often joined Tommy's video calls with struggling veterans, providing both legal guidance and emotional support. "Tommy taught me something about resilience that no law book ever could," Judge Caprio reflected during a virtual veterans meeting. "He showed me that sometimes the people who've been broken the most are the ones with the greatest capacity to heal others." The pandemic also brought an unexpected reunion that completed Tommy's healing journey. In March 2021, Tommy received a call that changed everything again. His son Michael, whom he hadn't spoken to in over 20 years, had been following his father's advocacy work through social media during the pandemic. "Dad," Michael said during their first phone call, "I've been watching what you've been doing. I'm proud of you. I've always been proud of you, even when I was too angry to say it." Michael, now a successful engineer in Seattle, had struggled with his own demons after his parents' divorce. "I blamed you for everything that went wrong in our family," he admitted. "But seeing how you've turned your pain into purpose, it made me realize I've been carrying around anger that was hurting me more than anyone else." Judge Caprio officiated at father-son reunion in the same courtroom where everything began. The ceremony, held in June 2021, was attended by over 50 veterans and their families. Local media covered the event, but what struck everyone present was the quiet dignity of the moment. 25 years ago, I sentenced a man to community service in this very courtroom, Judge Caprio told the gathering. Today, I'm witnessing a man who has made community service his life's mission, not because a judge ordered it, but because his heart demanded it. Tommy's response was characteristically humble. "Frankie gave me back my name that day. Not just Tommy Benedetto, defendant, but Tommy Benedetto, human being. Today, my son gave me back my title, Dad." The impact extended far beyond Providence's city limits. Harvard Law School invited both Judge Caprio and Tommy to speak about restorative justice in 2022. Their presentation, titled "Friendship, Forgiveness, and the True Meaning of Justice," became one of the most requested videos in the law school's archives. During the Harvard presentation, Tommy addressed the future lawyers in the audience. "Every person who comes before a judge is somebody's child, somebody's friend, somebody's hope. They may have lost their way, but they haven't lost their worth." Judge Caprio added, "The law is our framework, but compassion is our foundation." Tommy reminded me that day that justice without mercy is just vengeance in robes. Tommy's health challenges in 2023 brought the community full circle. When Tommy suffered a second heart attack in January 2023, the outpouring of support was overwhelming. Veterans from across New England traveled to Providence to visit him in the hospital. Judge Caprio visited daily, often bringing cases to work on in Tommy's hospital room. "I'm not ready to go yet, Frankie," Tommy told his old friend from his hospital bed. "Too many guys still need help. Too many families still need healing." His recovery became a community effort. Veterans organized fundraisers, local businesses provided meals, and Judge Caprio arranged for Tommy's medical bills to be covered through the court's Victim Assistance Fund. The full circle moment came during Tommy's recovery. A young veteran named Marcus, who had been helped by Tommy's program 2 years earlier, now ran the day-to-day operations while Tommy recovered. Marcus had been homeless, struggling with PTSD, and facing multiple court charges when Tommy first met him. "Tommy saved my life," Marcus said during a local news interview. "Now I get to help save others. He showed me that your worst day doesn't have to define your whole story." Judge Caprio, watching Marcus coordinate veteran services with the same passion Tommy had shown, observed, "This is how real change happens. One person helps another, who helps another, who helps another." Tommy didn't just change his own life that day in court. He started a chain reaction of healing that continues to spread. By 2024, the Federal Hill Fellowship had evolved into a statewide network. Rhode Island's governor signed legislation creating the Tommy Benedetto Veteran Support Initiative, providing state funding for peer-to-peer veteran assistance programs. Tommy, now fully recovered and stronger than ever, testified at the signing ceremony. 5 years ago, I was homeless and hopeless, Tommy told the state legislators. Today, because one friend refused to see me as just another case number, we're changing how this state treats its veterans. That's the power of recognition. That's the power of refusing to give up on people. Judge Caprio's reflection on that day 5 years earlier had gained new depth. In interviews marking the 5th anniversary of their courtroom reunion, Judge Caprio often spoke about how the encounter had changed his approach to justice. "I learned that day that a judge's most important tool isn't the gavel," he explained. "It's the willingness to see the person behind the charges." Tommy taught me that justice isn't just about punishment or even rehabilitation. It's about restoration, restoring people to their communities, to their families, to themselves. The lasting legacy continues to influence criminal justice reform nationwide. The Caprio model of restorative justice, built on personal recognition and community connection, has been implemented in municipal courts across 12 states. Law enforcement academies now show the video of Tommy and Judge Caprio's reunion as part of their training on community policing and de-escalation. Tommy frequently speaks at these trainings, always ending with the same message: every person you encounter is fighting a battle you know nothing about. The question isn't whether they deserve compassion. The question is whether you're brave enough to show it. What began as a chance recognition has become a movement. Today, Tommy Benedetto is no longer defined by his lowest moment, but by his response to second chances. Judge Frank Caprio is remembered not just as a compassionate judge, but as a friend who refused to let someone disappear into the system. Their story continues to inspire because it proves that the most powerful force in any courtroom, in any community, isn't authority or procedure. It's the simple recognition that we are all, in the end, just people who need each other to find our way home. And sometimes, home is found in the most unexpected places, even in a courtroom where justice and friendship meet. Because in the end, the greatest verdicts aren't always delivered from the bench, they're delivered from the heart of one human being to another. This is why Judge Frank Caprio's legacy will endure long after his robes are hung up for the final time.